All right, yes, that's His Excellency Elijah Onyeagba, just thinking about different things, really. He's Nigeria's ambassador to Burundi. He's here. He's on leave at the moment. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Yes, I know. We're not talking diplomatic issues as of yet. We're talking scenarios that are playing out in the country, the fuel subsidy. Then we'll also take a look at what might play out with the 10th National Assembly pretty soon. So that of Labour and the government, we know they've been having several meetings. They had another one yesterday, and then the courts also came through that the industrial court concerning that, where we see what informs Labour's suspension of this planned nationwide strike. So we're hoping to get you that report, some narrative to give you some background concerning what transpired, and as we progress here when we do have them ready. Good morning again. Thank you for coming on here today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
So all of those reports that have made the rounds yesterday about the meetings with Labour and government meeting at some point, NLC wasn't there, but NLC eventually had that meeting. He left people thinking different things, but having been observing how some of these things are playing out, what kind of concerns did you have, if you had any?
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's my pleasure coming here. First, I'd like to say thank you to the Nigerian Labour Congress and the TUC for showing extraordinary, to attend that meeting with a resolution not to proceed on strike. I felt it was extraordinary. Now, this does not take anything away from the fact that there are challenges with subsidy removal. However, I'm an economist, so I understand that the responsibility of government is to allocate scarce resources. And whenever government fails to allocate that scarce resources efficiently, there are always opportunity costs to those things. And for me, subsidy removal, it has come to a point where we have no option than to remove it. What we've found out over the years is that government has been kicking the can down the road. Okay, we are spending quite a lot, and it's like Joe, if you go as far back as 2011, when Honorable Lawan did the report, an ad hoc committee on subsidy, you find out that, it's like Joe, subsidy is just expanding and expanding. And we have come to a point where we need to ask ourselves, it's important to look at the amount of money we have and that we're spending on subsidy to ensure that everybody has cheap petrol. And ask ourselves, what are the alternative uses of these funds? And can we continue doing what we're doing? When you spend on subsidy, what that means is that resources can also be used for education, infrastructure, health. And where you are not spending on these, you find out that even the cost, what you're trying to prevent, when you don't have good education, when you don't have good infrastructure, you also find out that whatever you're trying to do by trying to ensure that Nigerians have cheap petrol also comes to fight back through other means. Okay. And I think that's the point I believe that Nigerians should be looking at this point in time. Okay, I also hear them say two things, two separate points. The subsidy removal itself, schools of thought to think, fine, nothing wrong with that, but we'll see what we can do about that. Then another that believe, well, not quite happy with the approach that the government had towards this. So someone who is in diplomacy yourself, are you concerned? Are you happy with the approach, the way this government is going about it? Is that an issue for you? No, it's not an issue for me. There is always going to be concerns. Issues of subsidies. Some people even said we should have allowed it to last till the end of June. That's what we have in the budget. I understand all of that. But whether you remove it now or you think it's valid? Yeah, it's obviously valid. But as far as I'm concerned, I am looking at the importance of taking an action. Because for a new government that has just come in, you always have a period of honeymoon, if you like, that you must actually take certain actions. And it's important for the president that, he goes ahead to let the people know that this is what he wants to do. Now, I understand the fact that a presidential, after the inaugural speech, a lot of people actually adjusted their price. Now, that's a different argument altogether, because that shows who we really are. We are the kind of business people in Nigeria will always want to take advantage of whatever opportunity that presents itself. Under normal circumstances, the price hike shouldn't have happened the moment or immediately after the inaugural speech. So that's also a different matter altogether. But I like to look at the things from, the wholesale part of it. What's important is that we cannot continue to subsidize petroleum products.
Some people don't have an issue with that bit, but they also think, for instance now, industrial court is ruled. I think it was the government that went there, but the industrial court says, look, don't do this, then they suspend it. It's a country of rule and law. You want to give people the impression that you abide by the law, because that's what brings you to where you are in the first place. And if you don't give them that message, and then they say, well, you disregarded the law yourself in the first place, because the budget is a law, you're supposed to abide by it, but now it's fallen flat on its face. So you don't want to give people that impression. Or doesn't that even matter?
No, you see, what I started by commending the NLC and TUC. I think what they've shown is that they are willing to negotiate. I think they're going back on June 19th to continue with the negotiation. They've shown that they are willing to talk to government. They've shown that they need to look at these issues. They already have their conditions listed out, and I heard from the last report that those conditions are not things that are out of the blues. But we also need to be very careful so that we don't come out from petroleum subsidy and go to other kinds of subsidies. We can't pretend to the fact that we are not aware that we have actually been borrowing to make petrol cheap for every Nigerian. And there are reports actually that also pointed out to the fact that quite a lot of people that are enjoying even this subsidy are people that shouldn't even be enjoying it in the first instance. Whenever the concept of subsidy is talked about, it should actually be targeted. And we have to find other efficient ways of addressing subsidy. Because people that have packed 3, 4, 5 V12 engine cars in their houses are the ones actually enjoying the subsidy. And I remember the question, I think during Goodluck Jonathan's administration, that I think it was Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, when he was the CBN governor, talking about who are we actually even subsidizing. Quite a lot of people we are worried about, without a doubt. They stay in the villages. They don't even come in contact with petrol on a day-to-day basis. I think there's a report I saw somewhere that talked about 3% of even the poorest of the poor. So clearly, I do not, pretend or want to pretend that there won't be hardship as a result of this. But I think it's important to explain to Nigerians and engage them appropriately. Let them know the opportunity cost, and then on the part of government also needs to show efficiency to now clearly show the people that this monies we are pulling out from here is going to go into infrastructure, it's going to go into education, because all of that in the long run. Refinery? Yes, refinery, it's without a doubt, because what obviously will happen is the PIB allows for food deregulation. What that means is that for government to continue to interfere with the price by way of subsidy, what it means is that even the competition into that space is always limited. But once government pulls out of subsidy, it means that the price of petroleum products are going to be market determined, and it allows for investors to come into that space and invest. By that, because you can't continue to say, let us place a wedge. It doesn't matter what the price of oil is. What are the inputs? The price of a finished product, the cost of freight, the cost of storage, the cost of distribution, whatever that number is, you say, no, you don't really care. Let's actually put it at a peg. So government continues to be at that loss at every particular point in time. So I believe that time has come for us to even explain to Nigerians the need for us to actually remove this, and then show them where that money is going to go into, and then they will be able to hold government accountable for ensuring that these monies that we're moving from here are also going here. And I think that the last administration actually increased the salaries of civil servants at the federal level by about 40%, I think. But should we even continue to also increase salaries? That's also a different matter altogether, because you can pull out the 400 billion. You
don't think we should?
No. I'm not saying that we should, that only increment of salaries cannot be the solution. We must also show people that once we create jobs, or once you start investing in infrastructures, you will have job creation, and which will also, people that are going to get jobs are going to be the young people. They will go back to also help their parents. So there will be multiple approaches towards addressing this fuel subsidy removal issues.
Quite a number of promises to be made on the back of just one singular action. And a number of people will rightly hold government accountable to the promises and the hopes and expectations that it has tied around the removal of subsidy. And for people who knowing the fact that we've been borrowing all of the time to, fund this fuel subsidy business, some people are going to say, are we really sure that we're being very honest with the real expectations from what we, especially in the immediate, in terms of what we're telling the people about what fuel subsidy removal should do for them? Or are we really raising the people's hopes really too high? And then, at the end of the day, government is unable to deliver, considering the hole that we've sunk ourselves into with that.
I understand all the suspicion. That's just because over the years, the politics of subsidy has always trumped the economics of it. And to that extent, the suspicion will always be there. But he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. And I think that that's the part that government also needs to come clean to say, this is what is going on. We can't continue to paper through the cracks or just continue to mask an injury and pretend that this thing's not there.
Have they told us in very clear terms what is really going on? Because as you pointed out now, we know now from what the GCU of the NNPC has said that we have been borrowing to fund subsidy. So even though, yes, technically there was provisions for subsidy to the end of June, we know that, that provision was through borrowing. In fact, in some instances, under recovery, losses to the NNPC and to the Federation accounts. That is how we've been funding subsidies. So do we really know for a fact that when we stop borrowing, for instance, when we stop digging this hole, how soon will we be able to fill it up to come to the level where we can actually begin to invest in health and in education and all these other lofty areas where we're looking to invest?
I think that what is important at this point is to explain to Nigerians what is going on, and that's what the government is trying to do. And I believe that the Labour and TUC, and indeed a lot of Nigerians, will be looking at the outcome of the meeting, will be looking at what kind of engagement that Labour Union and TUC are going to have with government. And I believe that in this engagement, all of these facts, statistics and numbers have to come clean. And to say this is what is going on. Without a doubt, we now know that we have been borrowing. If in case we just be pretending not to know, we've been borrowing to actually pay the subsidy. How does NNPC work? NNPC have got its own quota of crude oil that they have to get the revenues. And it's actually these revenues that are actually using in turn to pay for the subsidy to ensure that petroleum products get to consumers at a certain price. So I think this fact is it's incontrovertible. Yeah. And I think that what we now need to do from here is for government to clearly show that this XYZ amount of 400 billion or something on a monthly basis should go into ABC. And I believe that between the Nigerian public, represented by TUC and Labour, we should be able to hold government accountable and review these things from time to see how much progress we've made.
I think the difference between us and many other countries who might decide to subsidize the price of petrol is the fact that we have crude oil. It's been so sad and very disheartening. Sorry?
Burundi doesn't.
Burundi doesn't have crude oil. I mean, and I was going to go there in terms of, what he's learned, in terms of, how other countries, even a country as little as Burundi, how they've handled their own energy problems. Because I know that, they have electricity, but they also import electricity into the country. It'll be interesting to know how they have been able to manage that and what we can learn from that. But where ours is really sad is the fact that we actually have crude oil. The refined products which we import into our country is something that we could have produced ourselves if only if our refineries worked. And for a number of people, they will continue to ask questions as to whether we have really, given a good account of ourselves as a country so blessed as we are, and just unable to provide the basics that need to, keep our economy going. And sometimes you really wonder, if we've really given a good account of ourselves.
Well, we've had challenges without a doubt as a government. There has been a lot of concerns as to transparency managing subsidy. It's, it dates back as, for the past 40 years where we've had oil boom. The challenge is that the oil boom we've had has actually, if you look at it, the revenues that has come from it hasn't actually been appropriately accounted for, particularly with the issues of subsidy. I remember I followed the Honorable Lawal's committee, where, CBN gave a different figure, Accountant General of the Federation gave a different figure, 1.6, 1.7 trillion, and then you also found out that the actual amount that was actually paid was about 2.5, 2.6 trillion at the time. So that's what I actually said, that the politics of this has trumped the economics of it. I'm an economist, first of all. I'll start from the basics, which is the fact that your responsibility, the job of government, is to allocate resources, and these resources are not infinite. They are very scarce, so you have to sit down and understand that some of these things have to be, we have done a lot with technology in Nigeria, but no matter, the achievements of technology, there are certain things that technology can do for us. It cannot, we have to do our roads, we have to do our hospitals, we have to ensure that our schools are functioning.
What I'm talking about is the fact that our refineries haven't worked. That we've not been able, as a people, we've not been able to keep our refineries working.
Yes.
To be able to, as the NLC president likes to, make the analogy, we produce cassava, we cannot make our own gari. That's just where we are. It is really very embarrassing, isn't it?
It is. It is, I must tell you, and that's the reason why I personally, feel that what government needs to do is to ensure that we follow through the petroleum, the PIB, that allows for investors to come into that space. Government have no business doing business. That's what we've seen over the years. Government's responsibility is to provide enabling framework for private sectors to come in and do business. And that's why I believe that the likes of Dangote Refinery and even the refineries we have now at the moment, I believe should be privatized. Let the people that are professionals in those areas, because what the corporates do, they are in the business of making profit. So you can't continue to hire people on the basis of federal character for a company business. You can't continue to ensure that people are represented at the board according to the geopolitical zones when the idea for running the particular business is to make profit. So I believe that what we need to do, we haven't gotten it right over the years, but I think that the next best time to start is today. And I believe that that's what government is trying to do. Yes, there will be difficulties, but over time you will find out that distance will thin out, because what we've been doing, just imagine whatever amount of money we made from crude oil, we in turn spend that kind of money back to subsidizing petroleum products. So I take the point in the chin. It is a responsibility that government have to carry on and then ensure that the people understand and also be accountable. And I think that's the word, because once people trust the process, I believe that they will be able to live with the hardship. It's actually going to be in the medium, in the immediate and the medium term. Over time, what you find out is that once investors beginning to come into that space, and we have an example in the the telco industry, we know what it took, a second billion to start.
Your Excellency, if I can, if you don't mind me butting in, pardon me for butting in. Truly apologize for that. But speaking to the issue that you are raising with Malkwe and for the capacity for us to produce our own gari from our own cassava, as the analogy that she gave. You spoke about the economics as opposed to the politics of this sector. Let's speak specifically to the monies that have been spent on the refineries. The House of Representatives, just not too long ago, I think it was even the last month, the last day of last month, said that we lost 307 billion naira to non-functional refineries. And they also said that for those non-functional refineries, we spent 4.8 trillion naira as cost of operations. And looking at the Auditor General's report of 2016, the NNPC didn't provide details of 102 billion naira oil supply to refineries. These things don't seem to add up. So even if, as you say, that the private sector should come in, what happens to our own refineries? Are you with those who say they should be sold? If so, how do we recoup these monies that have been spent? Would you agree to what some suggest as a forensic audit, so that whatever monies we lost, we can at least recover some?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I totally agree with you on the numbers. Clearly, what we have seen over the years, both from the reports of the Auditor General of the Federation and some of the ad hoc committees of the National Assembly, I'm strongly of the opinion that our refineries haven't worked, and the reason why they haven't worked, the reasons are very clear to everybody. The way government functions is that recruitment, you have to work to ensure that there is representation across, this issue of federal character is a big problem. Government, I repeat, have no business doing business. I believe that it is time that our refineries are sold off. Remember that I think when President Obasanjo was about to exit, some of those refineries were actually sold, but the government of Yar'Adua came and actually reversed that sale. And I think it was an error, because I believe that those refineries should find their ways to the hands of the people that are supposed to manage it in a much better manner. And once that happens, government will stop budgeting for, turnaround maintenance. Government will stop budgeting for the salaries of the people that are working at the refineries. This actually should be taken off government books. The business of government should be to provide an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. So I do agree, whatever the government needs to do now to ensure that we move off. For example, government actually have some stake in Dangote refineries, but they are not the majority shareholders. They are not the ones to call the shots. So I think that kind of example is, what I believe should be replicated across the length and breadth of the refineries that we have in Nigeria. Maybe just maintain a little stake, just to have what is anyone has. It can be taken to the table and it will be resolved eventually.
Just wanted to ask you quickly, do you think that there are any lessons that we can learn from Burundi in terms of its energy, how it manages on energy issues? Okay,
thank you very much. I have been in Burundi for 2 years plus right now, and Burundi actually has an energy crisis. And time and time again, they've come to Nigeria seeking for assistance. And I think January 2nd this year, a special envoy was sent from Burundi to President Buhari for assistance with fuel and all of this. In fact, the queues in Burundi is crazy. The conversion rate is about 750 naira per liter of fuel, and diesel is about 740, 730 naira thereabouts. So they also have their crisis at the moment. It's actually a landlocked country, meaning they have to import through Tanzania or through Kenya, and then truck, coming through the lake, and then all of that. So the logistics is a bit crazy. So they actually do have their crisis at the moment, long queues to be able to get these products. However, they are also trying to do everything possible to manage it, because what government does is to manage. In fact, for them, it's a company that brings it in, and every other person comes to that same company to be able to take the product. So it's been quite challenging, and I think it's important that when we do this comparative analysis across the African economies, across the world, it's also important that we see, okay, what's the price? What is this sold for here? What is this sold for here? So it's 540 here, it's against 750 in Burundi, for example. But that is not to say that whatever needs to happen for Nigeria at the moment, that the price can come down, because once you have a lot of players coming into that space, it's a timing difference. For Burundi, I think that they are looking forward to Nigeria to actually assist them.
So while they might have the challenge with petrol, they do not seem to have electricity.
No, they don't. Nigeria is doing much better. The electricity is a big challenge. It's a big challenge for Burundi. It's a poor country, but with a lot of potentials, I must tell you.
All right, we have to thank you for coming on. His Excellency Elijah Onyeagba is Nigeria's ambassador to Burundi. Thank you for coming on, and all the best.
Thank you very much.
All right, we will be back in just a moment. Join us again.